I am 93 years old, and the most painful moment of my entire life did not happen when my wife died. It did not happen when I lost my job. It did not happen when the doctor gave me news I wasn't ready to hear. It happened at a dinner table, in my own home, surrounded by my own children. My name is Walter James Hutchins, born the 3rd of September, 1931, in Clarksville, Tennessee. I worked 34 years at the Cumberland Paper Mill on River Road, raised 4 children in a narrow white house on Elm Creek Lane. That always smelled like wood smoke and coffee and something quietly holding itself together. My wife, Margaret, passed in 1978. Youngest child was 6 years old. I did not remarry, did not consider it. I simply rolled up my sleeves and became both parents at the same time. Packed lunches, attended school plays, learned to braid hair badly and apologized for it. Worked the early shift so I could be home before dark. For 40 years, I gave those 4 children everything I had. Everything. And then one Sunday evening in the spring of 2019, my eldest son Raymond looked across the dinner table in front of everyone and told me I was too old to understand anything anymore. The table went quiet. Nobody spoke. Nobody defended me. I said nothing. I folded my napkin slowly, placed it beside my plate, and stood up with whatever dignity I had left. That silence was the heaviest thing I have ever carried. Let me take you back to before that dinner table, before the silence, before the hurt, back to when those 4 children were small enough to need me for everything. Margaret and I had built a simple life on Elm Creek Lane. Nothing fancy, nothing extra. But it was ours and it was warm. And every corner of that house had a memory attached to it like wallpaper. Raymond was born in 1961, then Susan in 1963, then David in 1965, then little Claire in 1972. When Margaret got sick in 1977, I told her not to worry. I told her I would hold everything together. She looked at me from that hospital bed with tired eyes and said, "Walter, I know you will." She was gone 8 months later. Claire was 6 years old and still called for her mother in the night, without understanding why she never came. I would sit on the edge of Claire's bed in the dark and hold her small hand and say nothing. Because there was nothing to say, I just stayed. That was all I knew how to do. I picked up extra shifts at the mill. Neighbors brought casseroles for 2 weeks, then stopped. The house got quieter. The children got older. The years move the way years do when you are too busy surviving to notice them. I gave up fishing, gave up Friday nights with friends, gave up the idea that my life was also my own. I gave it all to those 4 children, willingly, completely, without keeping score, at least. That is what I told myself. The distance did not arrive all at once. That is the thing nobody warns you about with children. They do not leave suddenly. They leave slowly. So slowly you almost convince yourself it isn't happening. Raymond was the first to go. College in Nashville in 1979. He came home for Christmas that first year with new words, new opinions, new energy that made our small house on Elm Creek Lane feel suddenly outdated, like something he had quietly outgrown. I told myself that was normal, that was growth. I was proud of him. Susan married young and moved to Memphis. David got a good engineering job in Atlanta. Claire eventually settled in Charlotte after finishing her degree. 4 children, 4 different cities. I stayed in Clarksville, alone in that White House. Wood smoke, coffee, silence where the noise used to be. The calls became less frequent, monthly, then occasional, then only on birthdays and holidays if I was lucky. I never complained, never made them feel guilty. A good father does not guilt his children for living their lives. That is what I believed. But somewhere around 2010, something shifted in the way Raymond spoke to me. Subtle at first, he began finishing my sentences, correcting small details, explaining things to me slowly like I was a child who needed patience, rather than a father who deserved respect. I noticed I said nothing because I told myself he is just busy. He is just stressed. He still loves you, Walter, but love and respect are not the same thing. I was learning that too late. The Sunday dinner in spring of 2019 started normally. Claire had driven up from Charlotte. Susan brought her husband. David came with his teenage boys. Raymond hosted at his house on Pemberton Drive. Big kitchen, long table, everything polished and arranged perfectly. The kind of house that looks like a life well lived. We sat down around 6. Food was good. Conversation moved easily around the table the way it does when people are performing comfort rather than feeling it. Then I said something about the old neighborhood, about Elm Creek Lane, about how the mill had shaped that entire part of Clarksville for generations. Raymond put his fork down, looked at me with patient, tired eyes, and said clearly in front of everyone, "Dad, times have changed. You don't really understand how things work anymore." The table went quiet. Susan looked at her plate. David reached for his glass. Claire folded her hands in her lap. Nobody spoke. I waited 3 full seconds. 4, 5, nothing. I looked around that table at 4 people I had packed lunches for, sat with in the dark, worked double shifts for, bled quietly for across 4 decades, and not one of them said a single word. I folded my napkin, placed it beside my plate, stood up slowly, walked to the guest room, closed the door behind me without a sound. I never asked them to remember what I did. I only wish just once they had noticed while I was still there. I drove home to Elm Creek Lane that same night, alone. Highway dark, radio off. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I had the strength to go inside. The house was exactly as I left it. Wood, smoke, smell, coffee cup from morning still on the counter, the old photograph of Margaret on the hallway wall, young, smiling, completely unaware of everything still coming. I looked at her photograph for a long time. Then I went to my desk drawer and I took out a folder I had been quietly adding to for nearly 30 years. 4 letters, 1 for each child. I had started writing them in 1991, the year Raymond first made me feel small at a family gathering, and I swallowed it without a word. I added to them slowly over the decades, not in anger, never in anger, just in truth. Each letter contained one thing only, a list. Every sacrifice I had made specifically for that child written in quiet detail, dates, amounts, decisions, moments they never saw because I made sure they never had to. Raymond's letter was the longest, 41 items, front and back, small, careful handwriting. I sealed them, wrote each name on the front, placed them back in the folder. They were meant to be opened after I was gone. But in January of 2023, I suffered a serious heart episode, rushed to Clarksville Regional, 3 days in hospital. Claire flew in immediately, and while searching my desk for my insurance documents, she found the folder. Claire called her siblings that same night. By the following afternoon, all 4 of them were sitting in my hospital room, chairs pulled close, letters open in their hands, eyes red and swollen. Raymond sat nearest the window. He had not spoken since he arrived. I watched him read his letter slowly. Page 1, page 2, 41 items in small, careful handwriting. Every school fee I covered working double shifts. Every opportunity I quietly funded without telling him. The fishing trips I canceled. The surgery I delayed 2 years because his college tuition came due the same month. He did not know any of it. I had made certain of that. When he finished reading, he folded the letter carefully, placed it on his knee, and pressed both hands over his face for a long time. The hospital room was completely silent, just the monitor beside my bed, steady, quiet, patient. Then Raymond stood up, crossed the room slowly, and sat on the edge of my hospital bed the same way I once sat on the edge of Claire's bed in the dark, when she cried for her mother and I had no words, just presence. He took my old worn hand in both of his, could not speak, just held on, and that was enough. That was everything. I am 93 years old. I did not need an apology. I did not need recognition. I only needed my children to finally understand that quiet love is still love, even when nobody notices it, especially then. If your parents are still with you, call them today, because some silences cannot be undone once they are gone. I have carried this quietly for 93 years. The least you can do is stay with me by subscribing.